Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining at Control Shift, a virtual conference for dreamers and doers. My name is Carmen Mays. I am the founder and CEO of Elevators, and we've partnered with Urban Impact and Wells Fargo to bring you this awesome conference full of experts and practitioners ready to drop gems all day. So before I hand it over to Herbert Wilkerson, who's going to walk you through the wellness check-in, I wanted to welcome you and also set some ground rules and intentions. So do not spam my chat. I will put you out. Be nice to people. If you're mean, if you're saying things that are inappropriate and derogatory, I will put you out. I will be on troll patrol and we will have a safe space because that's what's really important here. All right, so I just want to make sure that's very clear. Also, be open to information. There are going to be a lot of things that you hear that you may not have known or that could possibly contradict what you already believe. Don't let that be threatening to you. Keep an open mind, keep an open notebook so you can take this information and apply it to your life and to your business as you see fit. If you have any questions or concerns, definitely let me know. You can chat me, you can email me. If someone is threatening you or otherwise being inappropriate, please let us know so we can remedy that behavior. Also, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling a little uneasy at any time during the day and you want to reach out, please let us know. We are here to help you. We want to make sure that you are well, hence the fact that we're starting off with wellness. And we want to make sure that you have a good time as well as learn as much information as you can. So without further ado, I give to you my frat brother, Mr. Herbert Wilkerson, who is going to lead us through our wellness check-in and make sure that we get our day started off right. All right, everybody. So I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna turn it over to him, and I'll see y'all next time. It's all on you.
Thank you. All right, so let me lock my office door so nobody barges in. So you see my ring light back here. So my name is Herbert Wilkerson. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I've been in the counseling profession for about 13 years or so as a counselor. Before that, I was a social worker. And prior to that, when I was in college, I just worked in helping type roles and jobs and what have you. And so also, I go by Herb, and I really want this to be an interactive presentation as much as possible. I know we're working in the chat, and I do see a few people in here. So I'm going to talk about, of course, like, the wellness check-in, taking care of yourself, self-care in general. But me being a counselor, I wouldn't feel complete if I didn't also touch on maybe some of the reasons why we need the self-care in the first place and maybe what we're not addressing along the way. And so I'm going to start out with a thing called cognitive distortions or unhelpful thinking styles. And I think that's important because in the work I do in therapy, we can work on a solution or try to have some coping tools or tricks or self-care tricks or habits or whatever you can try to develop. And it's also important that we address the root cause or address the thought that's causing the feeling that leads to the behavior. And so I, as a therapist, take a cognitive behavior approach as sort of my foundation. And with that, one of the common terms that I use is that thoughts cause feelings and not the other way around. And so how we think impacts how we feel. Now, we might use terms like I think, or I react without thinking. And that can be true in some aspects because you can go from thought to feeling to action very quickly because you may have done whatever over a period of time. But at the root of it, it starts with a thought. And so how do we challenge these thoughts? How do we identify these thoughts as a part of being able to impact or apply some corrective action toward those thoughts. And then from there, we'll get into some self-care rules, so it's more or less, not necessarily like things you can go do for self-care, but ways of like understanding what self-care looks like, how to protect yourself, and whatnot. And then the 6 dimensions of self-care. And so as we're looking at that, understanding self-care does go in categories. And so, and a lot of research has really talked about the 6 dimensions of self-care. And then we'll look at some time management too, and something that I use with a lot of my students that I work with. I do work in a higher education setting with the 4 quadrants of time management. And with you all being very business savvy people, I think what we can talk about can be helpful. So yeah, that's where we're going to start. And we're going to go from there. And at any point in time, I will be looking back and forth the chat box as much as possible. So please ask questions. I have a lot of experience in different settings and working with a variety of people in counseling. And so if I can't answer it, I will tell you I don't know, but I'm confident I can answer pretty much everything, or at least give some insight. All right, so before I get started, any general questions or anything that you would like to see me touch on during our time together? All right, so with that being said, let me go to my screen. Okay, I did see something pop up. So handling depression without medication. All right, we will touch on that. All right. All right, so I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. And so the way I want to do this, this part at least, is we'll look at these 4 at a time. So I want to just bring it up, and I'll, for a few minutes or, however long, go back to the video screen so I can look at the chat box so we can discuss what comes up, So here we have what is in this handout termed as unhelpful thinking styles. And I encourage you to screenshot this or what have you. But unhelpful thinking styles, also known as thinking errors or cognitive distortions. There are 10 of these on this list, and we pretty much all use these in some form or fashion, some more than others. And so as something resonates with you, think about it, take it in, think about how it applies to where you are in life, where you are in your business, and you can enter that into the chat box, and we can discuss that too if we have time. So the first 4 that we're going to start with with unhelpful thinking styles, the first one is all or nothing thinking. And I can imagine that a few people can connect to this. I know when I use this in therapy with people of all ages, especially working with the college student population that I work with, all or nothing thinking is something that really lives with people because perfectionism is a real thing. And so when you live in a world of perfectionism, then the mindset is either I got a 100 or I got a 0, either I got an A or I got an F, and it's hard to see anything in between the A and the F as being something good is taking place, or why I've been been productive. And so so that's one of them. So with that, even if you got to say an 85, it's hard to see past the 15 points you didn't get and acknowledge the 85 points you did get. It's either I passed or I failed, and there's no room for in between. Now, a lot of times that sort of messaging is handed off to us, whether it be from parents, whether it be from the environments that we're in, whether it's something we take on for ourselves. And so all or nothing thinking. Overgeneralizing, basically taking like one thing and make it the entire story, as you can see by the description. Describe the entire event based on a single event. The mental filter, only paying attention to certain types of evidence, noticing our failures and not seeing our successes. And that's something that, a lot of us experience in life, because for some reason we feel like embracing the failure will make us work harder, achieve more, and not get lazy. However, we still deserve to give ourselves grace to be able to progress, do well, acknowledge what's going right, and also look at things not necessarily as failures, but these are areas of growth. And then that leads into disqualifying the positive and overemphasizing the negative. So you can look at the good things that's happened, but then we'll quickly chunk those away and be like, well, nope, I can't focus on that. I got to focus on something else. Or the way we look at ourselves and value ourselves in our work, like we want the accolades, we want the feeling of being productive, but we're quick to like push away any feelings of like accomplishment because we may not feel deserving of that. So with that being said, those first four, anything stick out? I see here, how do you cope with all or nothing thinking in 2020? That is a great one, because in 2020, we are living in the world of cancel and criticism, and nobody has room to make mistakes. And I heard somebody on ESPN say this yesterday. It's like we're expecting people to be perfect and not have any room for error or mistake, and that's just not fair. That's not a fair expectation. And so one of the things that I talk to people about is giving yourself grace. Like, we'll offer grace to other people. We'll hope people offer grace to us. But at the same time, giving ourselves grace and leeway to not get it all right. And so also with the kind of culture that, we live in a society, but also you working in business, there's this whole mindset of like grind, don't sleep, no time for this, no time for that, 24/7 hustle. And the reality of it is that you got to go to sleep. You got to meet your basic needs. You have to refuel. And so getting away from that all or nothing thinking is being able to acknowledge what went well. But what tends to happen is when we acknowledge what went well, we get met with a but or something to like diminish or minimize what we've done. And then we attach to the negative or the all or nothing thinking or the pessimistic way of looking at things. And it's like, you know what? I accomplished this. This is where I want to grow next. So let me reevaluate and go from there. And some of that goes back to like internal discussion, self-talk. What type of affirmations are you using towards yourself? And like I said earlier, giving yourself grace. Anybody want to add in on that? All right, so I know we have bit of a 5-second delay. So I want to just make sure I get everything. And if I don't clarify something enough, don't hesitate to put it in the chat box. I'll make sure to leave a little time at the end so we can, have more time to talk about it. So going back to the unhelpful thinking styles. So we get down to the next 4. So I'm gonna let this sit here for a minute, and so you all can take it in. And I can feel people just being seen right now, because whenever I talk about this with my clients, I feel seen too. And I'm very authentic with them and tell them, look, I live in these unhelpful thinking styles myself. And so regardless of how much insight I may have on this part of it, I still deal with things myself. And so jumping to conclusions, mind reading. I mean, how many times have you had an entire meeting take place in your mind before the meeting even happens, and already figured out how you're going to tell such and such off when they get in there and start tripping, or how you're going to respond to the email that they're going to send and everything like that, or just predicting the future without all the information. And so jumping to conclusions, magnification, catastrophizing, and minimizing. One of the common terms that I use in sessions is catastrophizing. We can take one situation and blow it up to be this catastrophic event. And it's not to say that the situation is not important, but am I giving it too much? And sometimes that can be built out of fear of looking bad, letting people down, not being seen as good enough. And so whenever something goes wrong, we will anticipate that it will be the worst possible thing ever. And a lot of that is due to those negative thoughts that live inside of us, because those negative thoughts know our innermost insecurities. And so we will think that maybe other people see those same things, and the catastrophe that we're imagining, they're going to imagine as well. All right. Emotional reasoning. I feel embarrassed. I must be an idiot. Assuming that because we feel a certain way that it must be true. That's a big deal, because, the way we feel about ourselves or a situation that we're connected to, challenging the thoughts connected to that, and also realizing where those thoughts originated, because they could have been given to you by somebody else. And then using critical words like should and must and ought are definitely buzzwords that when they happen in therapy sessions, we address it, because words like that can lead to feelings of shame towards yourself. All right. So let me stop sharing. All right. So I see some questions in the chat. Can you speak to some healthy practices to protect your mental health now with high racial tensions and COVID? For that, monitor how much you consume. I've been a part of some conversations about racial tensions and COVID. And anytime I'm a part of these conversations, I stay in my lane. I come from the mental health perspective. And so I know as a Black man, there's certain things I can't put down. Like I can't put down my skin. I can't put down the fact that I'm viewed as a threat. But I can determine how much I consume and how much space I have for something. And sometimes I have to realize I don't have space for it right now. And it's okay to step away. It's okay to take a break from how much you view, how much you repost, or even how much you consume, some social media and whatnot. And when it comes to COVID, I tell people, you got to do what you got to do to feel safe. And so, because, being in the house all the time for a lot of people is not the best thing. And you also don't want to be out here, I guess, living reckless, but, do what you got to do to feel safe. Mask, hand sanitizer, wash hands, distance, being in places you feel safe, around people you feel safe being around. So I don't know if anybody wants to add to that, but that's kind of like, just kind of, I guess, directives for us, like really, really taking in how much you consume. Unfollow, unfriend, unsubscribe, because people play on our fears and emotions, and whether it be news outlets or just people who like to stoke fires on social media, especially those, like, I know for me, people from high school that have a lot of views that I don't agree with and make a lot of random statements. And so I don't get in the comment section battles, and I'm quick to unfollow. Quick. How do you get rid of negative thoughts if you've been living with them for years to the point it's the only way you think? Latasha, that is a great one. One thing I would say is consider counseling. Because when you look at some of these unhelpful thinking styles, these aren't new. And so these negative thoughts can lead to anxiety, depression. They can lead to, physical manifestations, heart palpitations, headaches, sleep hygiene off, relationship to food, changes. And so it might be a situation to where, you get to a space where you can talk to somebody in a confidential setting. I will say, as a therapist, a lot of your jobs have employee assistance programs. And so sometimes that's, something that you can use. They may cover so many counseling sessions. Also, can't even afford to have a sliding scale. That's, I would say some jobs have it, and insurance can also pay for it. So I don't know what your insurance situation is, but if you have insurance, you can do the copay if that's an option. And there are also individuals who they do pro bono work as well. And so on Instagram and whatnot, you can find different pages that talk about that. I know Black Women Therapy is a page, Black Men Therapy is a page. And so they can kind of connect you to resources in different areas. You can Google it. And then sometimes people do bartering services. If you can't get to a person that you can talk to in a confidential setting, then also communicating to someone that you feel like you got a trusting relationship with, and being vulnerable and honest about it, because, that can be a thing as well. Like, and you say, I don't have a job, I was laid off. So talking to somebody that you're close to can be helpful. And just processing through those things. And even still, experiencing the job loss, still finding ways to do things for yourself, to prioritize yourself, to treat yourself well. Challenging negative thoughts are important. Like, what are you telling yourself as a result of not having a job? And then challenging that and going from there. Let's see. How do you best communicate your needs and mental health to your loved ones, friends, in the way that they can understand? Well, I think it's important to be careful who you communicate with, because everybody doesn't have the capacity to be supportive when it comes to mental health. And also, I think it's important for you to maybe have some of those conversations with yourself before taking them to other people, so you're able to convey the message that you're, wanting to convey, and know what you need when it comes to support. You may not want somebody to fix it or come up with a clever statement to make you feel better. You just may want to be heard. And it's okay to tell somebody like, listen, I need to be heard right now. I don't really need a lot of advice, yada, yada, yada. And then you can express whatever you need to express to them. And, you know the people closest to you. And so you know who's going to be most receptive to the conversation. And you might have to preface the conversation based on who you're talking to. So yeah, I hope that answers some of it. And I would say, Latasha, checking your area. You can call different counseling practices and whatnot, especially like looking for if it's important to you, like, gender identity, racial identity or whatnot, and see that they have anything where they're offering any kind of free counseling, or do they know of anybody offering free counseling. I know for here in Birmingham, with the Brothers Let's Talk program, they've been able to collect some money to do free counseling sessions for Black men in this area, and so for people who can't afford it. So with the increased emphasis on mental health in our communities, you're starting to see more things like this take place. So yes. So let me go back to the handout. And keep sending the questions. I appreciate this. I will answer as much as I can, and hopefully it's helpful. And so when we get to the last two, you think about labeling, and this is my fault. So I'm a loser, I'm completely useless, or it's about them, they're such an idiot, or you personalize things to say, this is my fault, and we blame ourselves. And one thing I say about blame, I think we as people in general, we look to blame because sometimes if we can blame whatever on something or someone, then we're able to make sense of it. If I can put the blame somewhere. And that's either we blame somebody outside of us or we blame ourselves. And sometimes it's not about blaming as much as it is just acknowledging what happened, all the context to what happened. Because it may not be as simple as I just messed up. It may be some extenuating circumstances taking place. We are in 3 pandemics: financial, COVID, and social injustice. And so you may have had some stuff happen in your family. You may be going through some personal stuff yourself. And all of that is a part of the story and the reasonings into why things may not turn out the way we want them to, or we may not get the entire outcome we're looking for. And so I think it's important that when we look at blaming, pulling away from that and then adding context to the situation. All right. So any questions or any comments on what we've talked about so far? All right. So moving on, and I know we're getting close to time, so I don't want to miss out on anything. Let me find what I'm sharing next. And so this is something that I've shared with people, and it's something to think about. And I won't go into too much depth about it. However, this is called the 4 quadrants. And so this is a way of looking at how we're managing our time, because how we manage our time has to, can have an impact on how we take care of ourselves, how we're doing from a wellness standpoint. And so one thing about checking in on ourselves in a way could be, taking inventory on what we have currently happening around us, and then figuring out, okay, what do I need to do from an organization standpoint to reduce the amount of stress that I'm feeling right now? And so in these 4 quadrants, you have urgent and important, not urgent and important, urgent and not important, and not urgent and not important. And so one of the things that will take place is that we will tend to see everything in the urgent and important quadrant. And so we will find ourselves in a frantic pace trying to manage it all, because we see everything as like, we got to get it done right now. We don't have time to, rest. And we end up spending time on things that may not be urgent and important. Like, it might be important, but it may not be urgent. All right. And so you can see this, you can screenshot it, and you can take any moment that you're in and you start to feel overwhelmed, and just, draw a couple of lines and start breaking down what you have going on and what quadrant does it go in, and how much time should I spend on it right now. And so this can be used in your personal life. This can be used in your professional life. This can be used when your mind is starting to be, to race, and you're overwhelmed and consumed with tons of thoughts. And when it's all inside of our head, it's hard to make sense of it all. And so something like this can be very simple as a way of like, let me put it on paper, let me spread it out, and then let me decide from here where I'm going to go. And in this, including yourself, including self-care, including mindless computer games and internet surfing or binge watching a TV show, because it may not be urgent or important, but it's something that you can do from time to time if it helps. And so this is a tool that I share with people a lot, and hopefully, this can be helpful. All right. So Taylor says, thank you for going over those patterns. I have found that organizing my thoughts and understanding this is why behind the way I really helps. Yep. And so thank you for saying that. And I mean, as a counselor, I keep going back to certain things. We're a product of where we came from. So sometimes we come from, bad home situations, or we just experienced traumatic events in life, tough environments, had to be resilient in some really tough situations, lack of resources. And those things shape us. I had a conversation with some students yesterday about that. And it was about my narrative in college, and like some of the things I had to do just to make it through college. I mean, it was very difficult at times. And those things definitely shape us and impact how we look at ourselves, how we look at other people, and how we see the world around us. And so hopefully the quadrants can be helpful in helping you organize what you have going on. And then it's really important to control what you can. And yes, breaking those patterns are hard. And I think with that, that's when some of the grace is. Because it's not a pass-fail system. Sometimes depending on how your mind is kind of wired, it's like, how long will this take? If I do this for this amount of time, will I be better by this amount of time? And you give yourself grace, and you allow yourself to grow, and you experience situations, and you learn to acknowledge, okay, I did this better. How can I add to that? Because I can't do it all at once. And just learn how to handle it better. And sometimes you got to look at stuff in like retrospect. So you may have gone through a situation and maybe didn't handle the way you wanted to. So it's like, at what point could I did something differently to change the outcome? Is there somewhere I can drop the file? Yes, I will talk to Carmen about that, and I'll drop that file, and I'll drop, whatever else I have to for y'all to have. So, all right. And also, I remember somebody mentioning earlier about managing depression without medications. What we'll talk about, especially now, self-care is a big thing. And I'm not a medication-like person. I don't just push medication on people. I will say this. I know as a Black man in in the culture I'm in, medication is definitely has been seen as taboo when it comes to the stigma in mental health. And so not everybody needs medication, and it's not a negative or detriment to you if you do. And you may know somebody that's taken medication before and had a bad experience. Well, their bad experience doesn't equal to your bad experience. All right. It's important that if you decide to take medication, that you're very honest with your prescriber, so that, you know, if you are having side effects, or if the medication is not working, or if it started working, then it stopped, or what have you, that y'all are able to pivot and make adjustments as needed. And so if you need it, there's nothing wrong with talking to your primary care physician about it, or what have you, and y'all can decide where to go from there. All right. All right. So all right. So I hope you're seeing self-care tips right now. So self-care tips. And I'm going to go through these pretty quick. And like I said, these will be dropped to where you can get them. But self-care means taking time to do things you enjoy. So we tend to think of self-care as like, you know, I'm going to get a massage, going to get a drink, or what have you. But it's more to it than just that. Self-care also means, you know, generally taking care of yourself, making sure that you're, you know, eating regularly, getting enough sleep, caring for your personal hygiene. People who deal with depression, personal hygiene can take a hit. Sleeping can take a hit. Making sure you're eating regular and drinking enough water can take a hit. The same with anxiety. Making yourself a priority. We can be made to think that if we make ourselves a priority, then we're somehow being selfish. And that's not the case. Making yourself a priority doesn't mean I'm kicking other people to the curb, but I have a duty and a responsibility to take care of myself, because you only have so much gas in the tank. And if we're constantly spending all that energy on somebody else outside of ourselves, then, you know, we're left, you know, feeling empty. And then sometimes we end up expecting for somebody to come take care of us. And that's not the case, because they're not checking in, because, you know, sometimes people just don't think to check in. And so finding ways to make sure you're making yourself a priority, set specific self-care goals. That can be exercising, that can be, you know, hikes, that can be doing arts and crafts, or just hobbies that you're into, whatever that looks like. Make it a habit. Like I, you know, have conversations with students, and like, you know, some version of self-care should be like brushing your teeth. And the thing is that you don't have to carve out an hour or two a day to take care of yourself. It can be just small routine things, like writing affirmations on sticky notes and putting them on mirrors in different places or whatnot, listening to podcasts, or, you know, whatever that is for you, certain music, journaling, art, whatever that is, doing that. You have meditation apps like Headspace, or you have guided meditation playlists on Apple Music, Spotify, and Pandora that you can, you know, consume, that can definitely help with self-care. And like it says here, a few minutes of self-care is better than no self-care. Unhealthy activities don't count as self-care. And I will say this, sometimes I go get a drink and that feels great. So I'm not going to tell you, not to, have a beer and think that's not, unwinding, but also like, the activity or the action of self-care is a little bit different than just doing nothing. All right. And even keeping up with self-care when you're not feeling good is very important. And self-care doesn't always come with like an immediate gratification. Sometimes we'll think that I need this like immediate satisfaction from doing something. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's really prescriptive, like taking medication. So like you take antibiotics, you don't necessarily feel it working, but it's working. And so like I'm a gym guy. I go to the gym. And some days I feel great working out. And some days I'm like, I'm not into it today. But I just know from if I don't do it, I know it won't be good from a mental standpoint. And so from a mental standpoint, it's like, I know I'm doing it because I just trust that I'll be better for it mentally as well as physically. All right. Somebody said, never thought that crafting is self-care. Yeah. Whatever you enjoy. I mean, there's times where like I grew up in the country, on a farm. So I'm used to like that kind of work. And so I don't do that now, but yard work for me can feel like self-care because I do so much of this on a day-to-day basis, like talking to people and whatnot, that doing that can be just like self-care because it doesn't require my mind to do it. I'm just doing it. Somebody said, I learned that self-care is making my bed. Yes. I know people that cannot get in their bed unless it's made. I'm not one of those people, but I know people like that, and you're definitely correct. All right. Buying flowers every 2 weeks. Yes. And anybody else that wants to throw anything in the chat that you do for self-care, please do, because other people can benefit from that. J.E. Crenshaw said, cooking is definitely self-care. Yes. Yeah, I've heard podcasts on people who cook for self-care. Yeah. One of the takeaways from a podcast I listened to, this was on Oprah's Soulful Conversations podcast. And this guy was like, he was talking about mindfulness and being in the moment, which is an important part of self-care. Like, stay where you are, not get too far in the future, too far in the past, but be in the moment. And he was like, cooking is a way of like being mindful. And when you're cooking, just cook. When you stir in the pot, just stir the pot. Don't stir the pot and then be in 20 different places with stuff you can't do anything about in that moment. So if you're planting flowers, just plant flowers. If you're, sewing or crafting, then just sew and craft. And if you find yourself wondering, remind yourself to come right back to where you are. And it doesn't mean this other stuff isn't important, but when I'm doing this stuff for myself right now, this self-care, I will have to at times remind myself to be right here where I am. Mm-hmm. All right. Stephanie, I'm assuming it says Stephanie Hicks, says Hicks Stephanie, but yes. And that's me too. Like, my mind races. Like, I like doing yoga, but I don't get the serene feel from yoga. I like it because it's physically exhausting, but if I don't have like guided meditation where somebody's like talking me through it, then my mind won't settle down for me to like really be in that meditative state. And so even when I'm like exercising and doing certain things, I have to remind myself, just be here. And that meeting you're about to head to in an hour or two is going to be there, but I don't have to go ahead and have the meeting right now. Spiritual baths, salts, essential oils, incense, candles, music, singing bowls, affirmations. Yes. All the stuff you can find on YouTube. Yep. Yeah, Calm is a good app. Calm is a good app, absolutely. All right, let me get into this last part. And so when we think about mental health self-care, this is something good to have. And these are the 6 dimensions. You have physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, professional. And I think it's good to have it this way because you can look at your self-care and prioritize it in sections in your life. Because self-care in itself is like anger. It's just like it's a word that can be all-encompassing. However, when you look at psychological self-care, taking time to self-reflect, which is important. Therapy and counseling, meditation, keeping a journal. Journaling is very powerful. Join a support group. That's something else that can be free. Is support groups and group counseling. I know here in Birmingham, there's a place that does grief work, grief counseling. And it's a lot of group work. And it doesn't come at a cost. And a lot of us, we can deal with things like unresolved grief. And that's not just from death, but, job loss, health issues, divorce, moving, financial changes, all those can lead to, any of those can lead to grieving. Emotional, explore a hobby, cuddle with your pet. You're starting to see a lot more emotional support animals. I, for one, kind of chuckled at those in the beginning, but I'm a strong believer in that now. And just having pets in general can be just really good for you. Practice self-love, cry, laugh, experience, allow yourself to experience your emotions. I think that's something that, when it comes to that grind culture, you feel like you don't have time for anything else but just grind, but allow yourself to feel how you feel. I'm a believer. I don't force feelings, but don't fight them either. All right. Spiritual, practice forgiveness, spend time in nature, connect with your spiritual community, whatever that looks like for you. All right. What's your connection to just the world outside of you? Personal, plan, set goals, spend time with family, learn a new skill, read a book, make time for friends, especially what we're living with right now in this pandemic and the isolation that comes along with it. Finding ways to connect with people that are important to you is it matters. And we can definitely get tired of the virtual communication. However, if that's what you have, that's important to do. And if you have ways to, be around each other and be safe, then you do that too. Professional, number 1, take your lunch break. I am a believer in not doing working lunches. And so I go to the gym over here on campus during lunch. I'll watch Netflix at my desk during lunch. I'm just not doing working lunches. I'm not typing notes. And it's just because just doing the kind of work I've done over years, learning how to set boundaries is so important. Because if it's too much carryover, then I'm going to take something that happened at work to another area of my life, and that other area of my life does not deserve it. So whatever frustration, hurt, let down I experience at work, it's now going to go with me somewhere else, and somebody's going to get the frustration of work or whatever that is, and that's not fair to them. And then physical, going to the doctor, eating healthy, eating enough, body movement, walking, if it's exercise, if it's hiking, whatever it is, move your body, get a massage. And yeah. All right. So looking at the comments. And so, yeah, it's giving free memberships for their card holders. All right. Let me see. Yes, emotional support dog. That is definitely a good idea. Humane societies always have, dogs that you can get. And then, some of these things like Pet Finder, you can find dogs, I guess, that meet more your specific needs. Repotting, digging your hands in dirt and stuff like that can definitely be calming. And let's see, Shine is a self-care app. I would definitely take that down. I didn't know that. Definitely share that with my students and other people that I work with. And so, in closing, take care of yourself. Say no. No is a complete sentence if you need to say no. If you take on too much and you start to feel burnt out, then put some stuff down. You're not a failure if you do so. And you take it easy on yourself. That's a huge part of self-care that I, get with people. And take care of yourself without feeling guilty. And when you do feel guilty, take care of yourself anyway, because that's a thing. Taking care of yourself without feeling guilty, because we'll feel like the 30 minutes I took to take care of myself, I could have used that 30 minutes to do something else. And now everything is a wreck because of that 30 minutes I took to take care of myself. And that's catastrophizing at its best. Take time for yourself. You'll find yourself being more productive and whatnot. And yes, no is a complete sentence. And that's it. Say no. All right, Carmen, I am done. I thank you all for listening and, dealing with the technical issues. I'm used to Zooming, so this is a new platform for me, but I do like it. And thank you.